In our last lesson, we learned that a variable is a container in a program where we can store information. In Vex, these containers really only hold numbers, which is good and bad. Good because it makes things easy, bad because it means there's a lot of things we can't do. But for our purposes, a variable is basically a place where we can hold a number and we can change that number if we need to. In the variable mystery assignment, we had a bunch of variables that we would set and then we would run a function, and the function would use the variable. That's a really clunky way to do things. It's a lot easier if we can have the variable be built into our function. So when we do that, it's called a parameter, and it's actually pretty easy. Let's go make one in Vex VR real quick. So I'm going to make a block, a function. Let's call it dummy function. And now I'm going to click add an input. And then this would be input number 1. Oh, cool, I can put the number sign in there. So now when I create my block and I use my block, see there's the little place where I can put in whatever number I want. And I can use that. So this dummy function is just going to make the robot drive forward for input number 1, for whatever number I put here. So this would make it drive forward 6,000. Not a very useful function, but it's a very simple example of a parameter and how we use it. So we can set up our functions to have as many inputs, as many parameters as we want. And then whenever we call the function, we just have to put something into that input. Now, two important details I want to point out. We can actually use functions inside of functions. And we can have the outside function use its input as the input for the other functions. This is called passing the argument. So in this assignment, you're going to make a function called draw square, and then you're going to take square size and pass it to another function called draw rectangle as both inputs, because a square is just a rectangle where the height and the width are the same. Now, to create the most interesting and powerful programs, you've got to know that you can combine variables with functions. We're going to mess around with that a little bit, but not a whole ton. I just want you to realize that you can do some really cool stuff if you master this skill. For this activity, I've created starter code. You can get the link here. You're going to have to download it and then open it. But all I did was create the functions and set up their parameters. You have to actually define what the function does. Looks like I've done a little bit here. Oh, I've given you some pseudocode. So for the first function you're going to define is draw a rectangle. I'm going to give you this. It's your job to go in and fill it in the rest of the way so that it draws the rectangle. I've given you comments with the pseudocode. It's your job to put the actual, move blocks and stuff in between the comments to create your function. It should look basically like this when you're done. Then you're going to use it to draw 3 rectangles and take a snip and turn it in. Drawing a square is just drawing a rectangle where the height and the width are the same. So if we go back to slide 2, this is what you're going to do. You're just going to draw a rectangle in there, and you're going to take square size and put it into both inputs. Then when I say draw a 600 square, it's just going to draw a 600 by 600 rectangle. Makes it very easy. You're going to draw 3 squares. Now do notice there's a negative number here, which does something kind of interesting. On this one, you're going to make a function called drive forward, draw square, back up. I'm not going to give you any more clues than that. When you run it with a distance forward of 300, -300, -100, size 200, -200, 200, you should get this as your output if you did it properly. For the final slide on this one, you're going to copy this code exactly. You can zoom in, make it bigger so you can see it, and run it. If you've done everything properly, it should pretty much look exactly like this. Give or take a tiny little difference here or there. But it's a nice, cool square spiral.